She had no manager, no label, no vocal coach, and no formal training of any kind. She stood in front of one of the most demanding judges in television history and played a guitar riff so technically precise that professional musicians watching from home stopped what they were doing and started searching her name. Her name is Nene Royal, and what she just confirmed about how she built that skill answers the one question her audience had been asking since the very beginning. Professional musicians do not typically pause mid-scroll to rewatch a teenager's audition clip twice. That's not how the industry works. But in the weeks after Nene Royal's first America's Got Talent performance aired, reaction videos from working guitarists, people who had spent decades in studios and on stages, started stacking up faster than anyone expected. Not because she was good for her age, because she was technically precise in ways that didn't match the story people assumed they were watching. The assumption was straightforward. A young girl, likely classically trained, probably groomed from an early age by a parent with a music background, following the same path dozens of child prodigies had followed before her. You see the pattern often enough in talent competition television that it starts to feel predictable. Young performer, impressive skill, impressive family behind them. Nene Royal didn't fit that story. And the more people watched her play, the more that gap between expectation and reality started to show. The way she moved on the instrument wasn't textbook, it was instinctive. The phrasing didn't come from a lesson plan. It came from something else entirely. And the people who knew enough to notice were the ones asking the loudest questions. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. Phuket, Thailand is not a city people typically associate with the shred guitar tradition. It's a coastal resort island. Beaches, tourism, markets, heat. Not exactly the place you'd draw a line to the kind of rock music Nene Royal grew up absorbing. Her full name is Prey. She goes by Nene Royal publicly, a name she built around the idea of performance, of standing out, of presenting something larger than a quiet life in a beach town. She started uploading videos to YouTube in March 2020. She was, by the channel's own description, around 10 years old at the time. The world was going into lockdown. Most people were struggling to stay entertained. She was learning to play Scorpion songs in her bedroom. What she uploaded in those early months was raw. The production was minimal. The angles were basic. But the playing was already doing something that formal students spend years working toward. It was connecting. Not technically perfect, but alive in a way that technical perfection often isn't. The tone she found on the guitar, the choices she made within a song, were not choices a beginner makes. They were choices someone makes when they have listened to something so deeply that it becomes part of how they think. She didn't go viral immediately. She built. Video after video, cover after cover, week after week. By the time the wider internet found her, there were already hundreds of uploads sitting in the archive. Most people who know this story stop here, but the real story starts right now. The question her audience kept circling back to was a simple one. Who taught her? It sounds like a small detail. It isn't. In the guitar world specifically, technique is almost always traceable. You can hear a teacher in a student's playing. The way someone angles their pick, the way they approach a bend, the specific patterns they default to under pressure. All of it carries the fingerprint of whoever sat across from them during those first 1,000 hours. Nene Royal's playing didn't carry that fingerprint. Musicians listening closely couldn't place a school or a tradition in the way she played. It didn't sound like classical training redirected toward rock. It didn't sound like a method book approach. It sounded like someone who had learned entirely by watching, listening, and then attempting again. Her channel description used a phrase that stuck: fingers faster than light. It was written with the breathless enthusiasm of someone who had watched her and genuinely couldn't explain it. Because speed in guitar playing is a product of efficiency, and efficiency is usually the result of years of structured practice. Watching her produce that speed without the standard pipeline behind it was the thing that kept professional musicians coming back to her clips. She never talked about this publicly, until now. When Nene Royal addressed the question directly, the answer was exactly what the guitar community had started to suspect. No formal lessons, no teacher, no structured curriculum. She had learned by listening and repeating, by pulling a song apart until she understood it well enough to put it back together with her own hands. She had watched other players and reverse-engineered what she saw. She had taken the sounds she loved and figured out, through repetition and experimentation, how to make them herself. This is not a path anyone in professional music typically recommends. Formal training exists for very specific reasons. It shortens the learning curve, eliminates bad habits early, and gives a student a framework for understanding what they're doing, instead of just doing it. The conventional wisdom says that self-teaching produces ceilings, that there are walls a student hits without guidance, places where they go wrong and stay wrong because no one is there to correct them. Nene Royal confirms she went through all of it anyway. The slow parts, the wrong turns, the years of working something out by ear, and then discovering later that she'd gotten it mostly right. What she didn't know, and what her AGT appearances made clear, is that the ceiling everyone warned about never showed up. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got, until now. America's Got Talent is not a guitar competition. It's a television show designed to produce moments, surprise, emotion, spectacle. The acts that move through the competition successfully are the ones that understand what the room needs and deliver it on cue. Nene Royal walked onto that stage and did something the show's format doesn't typically reward. She played a self-written instrumental, a piece called Real Verse, with no vocal hook, no big sing-along moment, no easy emotional anchor for a casual viewer to grab onto. It was technically demanding music presented to a mainstream audience and a panel of judges, one of whom has spent decades making judgments about commercial viability. Simon Cowell's first read of her was documented. He was skeptical. He'd seen the presentation before: young performer, unusual background, dramatic build-up. What he hadn't seen was what came out of the amplifier when she actually started playing. The technical precision of what she did on that stage landed differently than anyone in the room expected. Professional musicians in the reaction community described what she played in specific terms: the scale choices, the speed, the cleanliness of the execution under live pressure. This was not someone playing at the edge of their ability and hoping for the best. This was someone playing comfortably inside a range they'd built over years, in a setting where most people that age would have fallen apart. That's when the decision was made, the one nobody around her saw coming. While the AGT footage was spreading across the internet, something was happening quietly on the channel where all of this had started. The numbers tell a story that most coverage of Nene Royal doesn't mention. In the 12 months surrounding her AGT appearances, her YouTube channel grew by more than 580% in subscribers. Her view count grew by nearly 900% in the same window. These are not the numbers of a channel that benefited from one viral moment and then leveled off. These are the numbers of a channel that had been building a foundation for years and then found the audience that the foundation had always been built for. The 1,200 plus videos she had uploaded before most people had ever heard her name. All of those covers, all of those practice sessions presented as performances, all of those weeks of work done without a manager or a label or anyone telling her what to post, they became the evidence. Not evidence of luck, evidence of deliberate accumulation. She had been doing the work in public, consistently, for 4 years before the AGT stage. The audience that found her after the show didn't find a beginner who had caught a break. They found an archive. And what that archive confirmed was the same thing the guitar community had already started to suspect. The self-taught path, followed long enough with enough discipline, had taken her somewhere the conventional route might not have. And that's when the decision was made, the one nobody around her saw coming. The question that follows someone at Nene Royal's moment in the spotlight is always the same one: what do you do with it? The trajectory of musicians who come through talent competition television is uneven. Some sign quickly, record an album inside a tight commercial window, and disappear from the conversation inside 18 months. Some take the visibility and redirect it into something they've been building independently all along. The second path is harder to execute, but it's also the one that tends to last. Nene Royal had something most competition breakouts don't arrive with: an existing body of work, a channel with years of content, an audience that found her before the show and will still be there when the show is a memory. She wasn't starting from zero when the spotlight hit. She was continuing something that had already been in motion for years. What the confirmed answer, that she built all of this without formal instruction, actually means for her next chapter is that the ceiling question stays open. There is no map for where a self-taught player with this level of skill and this level of discipline goes from here, which is exactly why the question hasn't gone away. The thing about Nene Royal's story that doesn't fit the standard template is that the work came before the recognition, by years. Everything that happened on that AGT stage was built in a bedroom in Phuket, across hundreds of videos that most of the world never saw, by a teenager who was not waiting for permission to get started. What comes next for her is genuinely unknown. The possibilities that open after a run like this, recording, touring, collaboration with the guitar community that has already adopted her as one of their own, are real. What she does with those possibilities will depend on the same thing that got her here: the discipline to keep working when the attention is somewhere else. Do you think Nene Royal's self-taught background is actually an advantage over classically trained musicians? Or does the lack of formal structure eventually catch up with every player who skips it? Let me know below.